A storm lashed across the English countryside, rattling the windows of Ashcombe Manor. At precisely midnight, a shriek pierced the silence, followed by a dull thud echoing in the grand hall. The butler, pale and trembling, discovered the lifeless body of Lady Eleanor Ashcombe, sprawled beside the ornate fireplace. In her hand lay a peculiar object, a crimson leather diary, its final page torn violently away. By morning, whispers spread of scandal, secrets, and betrayal. Scotland Yard called upon none other than Monsieur Hercule Poirot, the famed Belgian detective, to untangle the sinister threads woven within the manor's walls. Chapter 1. The Summons to Ashcombe. Part 1. It was on a raw November afternoon that Hercule Poirot, my incomparable friend, sat opposite me in our modest London sitting-room, peering fastidiously into the delicate depths of his teacup. A coal fire glowed warmly in the grate, and the fog outside pressed thick against the windows. In such weather, Poirot's comforts were a ritual, a perfectly measured infusion of Darjeeling, a plate of precisely aligned biscuits, and the serenity of an orderly interior. For my part, I had just tossed aside the newspaper with some annoyance. The day's headlines were a dreary litany of scandals and society gossip, business failures, divorces, and an account of a jewel robbery in Paris. I stretched in my chair. "Really, Poirot," I said, "there seems to be little of interest in the world today. A fellow might almost wish for a good old-fashioned case to occupy one's mind." My friend raised a finger, his eyes twinkling. "Ah, Hastings, jamais. One must not wish for misfortune. Crime, it is a human tragedy. And yet," he shrugged with his usual Gallic flourish, "I confess, I too find myself a little, how do you say, restless." At that very moment, there came a knock at the door. Our landlady, Mrs. Finch, bustled in with a card upon a tray. "Inspector Japp, sir. Urgent business." Poirot's moustaches quivered with amusement. "Eh bien, Providence responds to your wish, mon ami. Show him in, madame." Of a diary, found in her hand. A crimson leather-bound thing. The last page was torn out, clean gone, and there are signs it may have been burnt in the fireplace nearby. Poirot's eyes glittered. A crimson diary, and the page missing. Très curieux. Continue, Japp. Well, there are enough whispers to make one suspicious. Lady Eleanor had been at odds with her husband. Money troubles, it seems. Then there's the nephew, Anthony Gray, a bit of a gambler, and the family physician, Dr. Mortimer. Rumour has it he was too fond of her company. And lastly, the companion, Clara Whitmore. Young woman, ambitious, jealous of her position. All in the house last night. I leaned forward with growing interest. "Sounds like a jolly mixture. More like a hornet's nest," Japp grunted. "The local police are treading carefully. The Ashcombes are old county family, don't like interference. But Scotland Yard can't ignore the peculiarities. So I thought of you, Poirot. Will you come down and give us your famous little grey cells on the matter?" Poirot drew himself up, fingertips pressed together. "Mon cher Japp, you do me too much honour, but yes, I shall come. For it is not the death itself that intrigues me, but the psychology behind the missing page. Why does one remove it? To protect or to accuse? To conceal or to reveal?" He rose swiftly, his decision made. "Hastings, you will accompany me, naturellement." My heart leapt. Though I am no detective, there is nothing I enjoy more than following Poirot into the heart of mystery. "Splendid!" I cried. "When do we leave?" "First thing tomorrow," said Japp. "I'll have a car sent for you. And Poirot, best be ready for a house full of secrets." Poirot merely smiled, his moustache shining like a polished scimitar in the firelight. Part 3. The following morning was sharp and frosty. We travelled in a police motorcar through the countryside, the hedgerows silvered with rime, and the fields lying still beneath a pewter sky. Poirot, wrapped immaculately in his greatcoat, with a muffler of silk, maintained his habitual composure. "Hastings," he said, "there is already a pattern. Observe mon vast staircase rising into shadow. All about hung the hush of tragedy. Sir Reginald Ashcombe awaited us in the drawing room, a man of late 50s, spare and hawk-nosed. His bearing was proud, yet worn with strain. He greeted us stiffly. "You are the detective, Monsieur Poirot? I cannot say I welcome this intrusion, but Inspector Japp insists." Poirot bowed courteously. "I regret profoundly to intrude, Sir Reginald. Believe me, I come only to serve the cause of truth." The widower's lips tightened. "The truth is simple. My wife suffered a seizure, and that is all. I will not have scandal attached to her name." Poirot's eyes flickered, but he merely murmured, "We shall endeavour to respect your wish, monsieur." It was at that instant that a door opened and a woman entered, the companion, Clara Whitmore. She was striking, with auburn hair and a proud carriage, her expression carefully composed. Her eyes lingered on Poirot with open curiosity. So began our sojourn at Ashcombe Manor, and the first glimpse of those whose lives revolved around Lady Eleanor. We were shown later into the great hall. Had met her end. The chamber was vast, its rafters lost in gloom, the hearth enormous and blackened. Poirot bent over the flagged floor, examining with a minuteness that never ceased to astonish me. "See, Hastings, the position of the body as described, near the fire, yes? And here, faint traces of ash scattered unusually. Some pages, perhaps, burnt in haste, yet not wholly consumed. That is most suggestive." He rose, brushing dust from his knees, and surveyed the company now assembled. Dr. Mortimer, tall and grave, with eyes that shifted uneasily. Anthony Gray, dashing yet pale, his hands restless. And Beatrice Holt, the maid, whose plain face betrayed suppressed agitation. One by one, Poirot engaged them with polite, searching questions. Their replies were conventional enough, yet beneath them I sensed unease, secrets tightly clutched. As dusk fell and the wind moaned about the house, Poirot stubbornly to the lawns, and a thin mist curled among the hedges, veiling the ancient stone of the house in a shroud of melancholy. From my window I looked down upon the gravelled sweep of the drive, where two black crows strutted ominously, as though heralding further misfortune. I found Poirot already immaculate, his moustaches gleaming, shoes polished to mirror brightness. He adjusted his cuffs with fastidious care. "Today, Hastings," he said, "we begin our examination of the dramatis personae. Each one has a role. Each one has motive or fear. It is the little contradictions that will betray them." We were summoned to the breakfast room, where Sir Reginald Ashcombe awaited us. He was dressed somberly in black, his face drawn yet proud. A half-finished cup of coffee stood untouched before him. "Messieurs," he said stiffly, "I am prepared to answer your questions, but I will not have my wife's name dragged through the mud. Eleanor was a woman of dignity. Her memory shall remain unsullied." Poirot inclined his head gravely. "Be assured, Sir Reginald, I seek only the truth. Sometimes, alas, the truth itself may cast shadows." At that moment, Clara Whitmore entered, her silk morning gown the colour of wine, her auburn hair arranged with studied negligence. She gave a fleeting smile that did not reach her eyes, and seated herself languidly at the far end of the table. I sensed at once the tension that shimmered like heat between her and Sir Reginald. He studiously avoided looking in her direction, while she seemed to relish the effect of her presence. Poirot's little grey cells, I knew, were already dancing. Our interviews began with Sir Reginald himself. Poirot questioned him with delicacy, drawing out details with apparent casualness. "Your wife enjoyed good health, I understand." "Indeed. She was strong, vigorous. No warning of this calamity. Yet she was troubled, perhaps." Poirot leaned forward. "The diary, this crimson diary, suggests unease." Sir Reginald's jaw hardened. Eleanor was imaginative. She brooded over trifles. That diary was her private amusement. It means nothing. "But the missing page, monsieur. Surely that means something." Her eyes held his unflinchingly. Yet her hands twisted a silk handkerchief in her lap. Poirot noted it, though he said nothing. When she had gone, Hastings muttered, "She's hiding something, Poirot. I'd wager it." Poirot smiled faintly. "Perhaps, mon ami. But the truth, it is like oil upon water. It will rise." Part 3. Dr. Julian Mortimer followed. A tall man, slightly stooped, with deep-set eyes and a nervous manner. He carried himself like one accustomed to authority, yet burdened with secrets. "You were Lady Eleanor's physician?" Poirot asked gently. "Yes. I attended her for years. She suffered only minor ailments. There was nothing to foretell such an end." Poirot inclined his head. "And yet you visited her frequently. Some would say very frequently." A faint flush crept over Mortimer's cheeks. She was lonely. Her husband, well, Sir Reginald and she were not always in harmony. I gave her companionship. "Only companionship, monsieur?" Poirot's tone was silky. Mortimer started. "I resent the implication." Poirot smiled courteously. "No implication, doctor. Only observation." "Did you see her on the night of her death?" "No. I was at my surgery in the village." He hesitated. "I came later, when summoned. She was already gone." His hands trembled as he spoke, and Poirot watched him with the air of one who files away a useful detail. Anthony Gray was our next subject, a young man of some 25, with handsome features marred by an air of recklessness. His eyes were bloodshot, his cravat carelessly tied. "Your aunt was generous to you?" Poirot began. Anthony shifted uneasily. "She helped me, yes, at times. Financially?" Anthony flushed. Everyone needs a little assistance now and then. Poirot's gaze was steady. "Yet you are said to have debts, monsieur. Heavy debts." "That's exaggeration. I've had a bad run, that's all. It doesn't make me a murderer." His voice was heated, his hands clenched. Poirot merely nodded, as if satisfied with the outburst. Part 4. Last came Beatrice Holt, Lady Eleanor's maid. She was a plain woman in ticking of the great clock upon the mantel. At last he rose, bowing slightly. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful." When we were alone, I burst out, "Poirot, this changes everything. If Lady Eleanor quarrelled with someone just before her death, surely that person is the murderer." Poirot lifted a finger. "Patience, Hastings. Let us not leap as the kangaroo. We know only that she argued. We do not yet know with whom, nor upon what subject, but—" He smiled mysteriously. "The little grey cells. They are already at work, and I fancy, mon ami, that Ashcombe Manor is not so silent as it pretends." Thus ended our second day at the manor, with suspicions quickened and secrets beginning to stir beneath the surface. And as the fog thickened outside and the wind moaned in the chimneys, I could not help but feel that darker revelations yet awaited us. Chapter 3. The Crimson Diary, Part 1. The library of Ashcombe Manor was a chamber both majestic and oppressive. Heavy velvet curtains framed tall windows that admitted only a dim, wintry light. Oak shelves lined the walls, groaning beneath the weight of centuries of accumulated volumes, their gilt titles dulled with dust. At the center stood a long table of dark mahogany, upon which Inspector Japp had laid the object of our inquiry, the Crimson Diary. It was smaller than I had imagined, no larger than a gentleman's pocketbook, yet bound in the finest Morocco leather, its clasp delicately wrought in silver. Against the gloom of the library, the diary gleamed like a pool of fresh blood. Poirot approached it with the air of a priest handling a relic. His fingers, gloved for the purpose, caressed the cover. He bent his head close, sniffing delicately. "Mon cher Hastings," he murmured, "do you perceive it? A faint odor, parfum. Not the scent of Lady Eleanor, no. This is of another woman." I bent to sniff, but detected nothing save old paper and leather polish. "If you say so, Poirot," I replied doubtfully. He smiled with indulgent superiority and opened the clasp. The pages within were filled with an elegant hand, slanting slightly. Fibers. Cut, not ripped. A blade was used, perhaps a small knife. Deliberate. Someone wished this page gone. I felt a thrill. But why not destroy the whole diary? Poirot wagged a finger. "Ah, that is psychology. To destroy all would arouse suspicion at once. But one page, discreetly missing? Many would not notice. The guilty one relied on that." He turned again to the preceding entries. Lady Eleanor's final words before the torn leaf were full of urgency. "Tomorrow I must decide. I can no longer remain silent. Better to endure scandal than to suffer deceit." Poirot tapped the page. Voila! She meant to reveal something of importance, perhaps even the identity of one who threatened her, but she was not permitted to finish. As he spoke, his gaze strayed toward the vast fireplace at the far end of the room. The fire had burned low, but within the grate lay grey ash and fragments of half-consumed paper. Poirot rose, seized the poker, and stirred gently. Suddenly, he stooped with an exclamation. With delicate fingers, he retrieved a small, charred scrap, still faintly red. "The diary, Hastings. She wrote until the very end, and here, the evidence of its destruction." I peered eagerly. Indeed, the fragment bore traces of crimson leather upon one side, and on the other, faint smudges of ink too blurred to decipher. Poirot regarded it with satisfaction. The murderer. He acted in haste. He feared the words of Lady Eleanor, but he did not succeed entirely. The fire, it is a poor servant to one who lacks patience. Part 3. Inspector Japp, who had joined us, rubbed his chin. "So she wrote something dangerous, and someone here tore it out and tried to burn it. Could be any of the lot we've seen. Sir Reginald with his money worries, the nephew with his debts, the doctor sniffing around, the companion with ambition. Take your pick." Poirot raised a hand. "No, no, my friend. You list motives, but motive alone is not enough. It is the psychology, the timing that matters. One asks, who had the opportunity to seize the diary through them, occasionally holding a fragment to the light? Regardez, Hastings. Here is ink. Though blurred, it is the mark of a fountain pen. And here, a word that begins with terror. Perhaps truth, perhaps trust. Ah, but we shall see." I marveled at his patience, his exquisite care for the smallest evidence. By late afternoon, the winter light had faded, and the library lay in shadow. Poirot arranged the fragments upon the table like pieces of a puzzle, though the writing was hopelessly incomplete. He sighed, smoothing his mustaches. "It is not enough. The message is lost. But Hastings, attend. What matters is not what we cannot read, but the fact that it was written, that another feared it. That fear drove them to destroy. He leaned back, eyes glittering. Thus, we know two things. 1. Lady Eleanor was on the brink of disclosure. 2. The guilty party was desperate enough to risk fire, to risk discovery. That is courage, or foolishness. I said quietly, "Poirot, do you think she knew her killer, that she meant to name them?" He regarded me solemnly. "Mais oui, Hastings, she knew, and she wrote. The tragedy is that her voice was silenced, but only almost." He gathered the diary, the fragments, and replaced them carefully. Then he stood, his gaze traveling slowly across the dim room, as though he saw in his mind the figure of Lady Eleanor bending to the page, then the shadow of another hand tearing it away. "She wrote, until the very end," he whispered, and in that whisper I felt the first chill certainty that we were in the presence of something far more than chance or malady. The diary was no mere relic of a life cut short. It was the very key to murder. Chapter 4. Motives in the Firelight. Part 1. The day waned swiftly at Ashcombe Manor. A storm pressed low upon the countryside, and as twilight deepened, the great hall filled with uneasy shadows. At Poirot's suggestion, the household was summoned one by one to speak with him before the fire. Sir Reginald Ashcombe was the first. He entered with stiff dignity, his black attire severe, his eyes burning with an indignation scarcely concealed. "My good sir," he said, "I must protest again at this examination. My wife left me ruined, not enriched." Poirot inclined his head, as though noting an equation upon a page. "Merci, monsieur. You have been frank. That is all for now." Part 2. Next came Clara Whitmore, drifting in with the languor of a cat. She wore a gown of pale blue that softened her features, but her eyes glittered with defiance. She took the seat opposite Poirot, crossing her legs with deliberate grace. "You wish to know of my quarrels with Lady Eleanor," she said coolly. "She did not approve of me. She thought me ambitious. She accused me of seeking influence over her affairs. Well, perhaps she was right." Poirot raised his brows. "You admit, then, that she intended to dismiss you?" "Yes, she threatened it last week, but she had not yet done so. And while she lived, I had comfort, security. Why should I hasten her end?" Poirot leaned forward. "Why indeed, mademoiselle? Yet you were seen pacing the corridor that night." Her lips tightened. "I could not sleep. The storm unsettled me. That is no crime." Her composure was admirable, yet her hands betrayed her, restless, tightening upon the folds of her gown. Poirot's eyes, bright and watchful, missed nothing. When she had gone, Hastings muttered to me, "She's as slippery as an eel. I wouldn't trust her an inch." Poirot merely tapped his finger against his temple. "She is clever, Hastings. But remember, it is not cleverness that unmasks. It is vanity." Part 3. Dr. Mortimer entered with reluctance. His tall frame stooped, his physician's bag still clutched in one hand. His eyes darted nervously about the room as though fearing eavesdroppers. "Monsieur Poirot," he began, "I tell you plainly, I had no hand in Lady Eleanor's death. She was my patient and, yes, my friend. If you mean to insinuate more than that—" Poirot lifted a hand. "Calm yourself, doctor. I insinuate nothing. But rumors are dangerous. Tell me, was there affection beyond the professional?" Mortimer colored deeply. "Perhaps. I admired her, yes. She was a remarkable woman. But I—" with the inscrutable patience of a chess master. Part 4. At last came Beatrice Holt, the maid. She entered timidly, hands clasped, eyes lowered. Unlike the others, she sought no pose, no defense. Only truth struggled upon her lips. "You served Lady Eleanor faithfully?" Poirot asked gently. "Yes, sir. She was stern but fair. I loved her in my way." "And On the night of her death? Beatrice hesitated, glancing toward the fire. I was on my way through the hall. It was near midnight. I heard voices, her ladyship's and another's. They were quarrelling, fierce, like never before. Poirot leaned forward. Whose voice, mademoiselle? Her eyes flickered with fear. I cannot say for certain. It was a man's voice, deep, but I dared not linger. I fled to my room and locked the door. I was frightened. The silence that followed was thick. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Merci, Beatrice. You have done well to speak. When she had gone, Hastings turned to Poirot, excitement in his voice. This is it! A man arguing with her at midnight, the hour she died. Surely that man is the murderer. Poirot raised a finger. Doucement, Hastings. We know she argued, but not the subject, not the words. And the maid, she is fearful. Fear distorts the memory. He stood, moustaches bristling in the firelight. Yet now the stage is set. Each has revealed motive. Money, jealousy, love, desperation. They circle Lady Eleanor's memory like moths to the flame. The truth, Hastings, it is here among them. We have but to wait for the flicker that betrays the moth's wing. The fire crackled, shadows danced upon the walls, and in that sombre chamber the weight of suspicion seemed to settle upon every stone of Ashcombe Manor. Chapter 5. The Diary Speaks. Part 1. Morning broke bleak and sullen over Ashcombe Manor. Rain streaked the mullioned windows, and the house seemed sunk in a silence broken only by the slow drip of water from the eaves. Poirot, immaculate as ever, sat at a small escritoire in the late Lady Eleanor's chamber, turning over a slim volume bound in crimson leather. The diary, Hastings, he murmured reverently. The voice of the dead, preserved upon paper. Let us listen closely, for here may lie her testament. I drew nearer. The little book was filled with Eleanor's neat, slanting hand. The earlier pages concerned trivialities, social engagements, garden notes, household accounts. But gradually the tone shifted. Poirot read aloud. Reginald presses me again. The estate cannot bear it. His temper grows sharp when I refuse. Poirot's mustaches twitched. Observe, mon ami, Sir Reginald is painted not as criminal, but as burden. Yet the seeds of conflict, they are sown. The next entry bore a darker hue. Clara flatters, yet beneath her smiles lies hunger. She would wield power here if she could. I must dismiss her, but not yet. She watches me too closely. I glanced at Poirot. She saw Clara for what she was then. Poirot raised a finger. Patience. A diary reveals the heart, but also its fears, its exaggerations. We turned another page. Here the ink was smudged, hurried. Mortimer lingers too long by my side. I must remind him of his duty, not his desires. If Reginald knew, what storm might break? Poirot murmured, a triangle most delicate. And triangles, Hastings, are sharp things. They cut. Then, abruptly, an entry from 2 days before her death. Anthony begs again. He swears this time it is the last. But I am weary of his lies. To pay him is to feed the fire. He grows reckless. If I refuse, what then? A chill ran down my spine. Every page seemed to throw suspicion upon another. Mon Dieu, Poirot said softly. She was surrounded not by family, but by last. Tomorrow I will speak and end the charade. Tonight I hear him outside. The sentence broke off, trailing into a jagged line where the pen had scored the page. My heart gave a jolt. Poirot. She was writing at the very hour she died. He closed the book gently, as though it were fragile glass. So it seems. And she names no name, only him. A man, Hastings. And she meant to reveal him the next day. He rose, hands clasped behind his back, pacing the chamber. What do we learn? That she feared betrayal, that she was prepared to unmask someone, and that her death prevented it. Voila, the motive, writ large. A knock sounded at the door. It was Clara Whitmore, pale and elegant as ever. Monsieur Poirot, Sir Reginald begs you to join him in the drawing room. There are matters concerning the diary. He has heard you found it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The foxes grow restless when they scent the hounds. Come, Hastings, we shall observe them dance. The drawing room was dim, the fire burning low. Sir Reginald stood near the mantel, Clara seated languidly upon the settee, Mortimer pacing, and Anthony leaning against the window frame with studied nonchalance. Beatrice hovered at the edge, hands clasped tight. Poirot entered, the diary in his hand. A hush fell. "Messieurs, mesdames," he said smoothly, "I have read Lady Eleanor's diary. It is most illuminating. Each of you appears upon its pages." Anthony gave a short laugh. "And what of it? Everyone confided in Aunt Eleanor. She wrote everything down. Doesn't mean any of us killed her." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "But one among you feared exposure. Lady Eleanor resolved to speak. Tomorrow, she wrote. Yet she did not live to see it. Someone ensured her silence." Clara shifted uneasily. "You cannot mean this is mere conjecture." Poirot ignored the outburst. Instead, he placed the diary upon a small table, open at the final entry. "Regardez," she writes, "I hear him outside." She names no name, but the pronoun is clear. A man. Which man walked the corridors at midnight? But take heed. Lady Eleanor's words remain. They speak from beyond the grave. And I, Hercule Poirot, shall translate them. Part 4. That night, Poirot and I sat again by the fire in his chamber, the crimson diary upon the table between us. Outside, the rain beat steadily, a dirge for the dead mistress of Ashcombe. Hastings, for that is I, could scarcely contain myself. Poirot, it must be Reginald. Beatrice swore she heard his tread. Eleanor herself wrote of him. And he gains the estate now, does he not? Poirot smiled faintly. You leap, Hastings, as ever, to conclusions. But remember, the diary is both truth and illusion. The pen of Lady Eleanor recorded what she perceived, but perception it may deceive. He opened the volume again, tapping the final words. Tonight, I hear him outside. Who was outside? Poirot mused aloud. A husband? A nephew? A doctor? Or could it be a ruse? A false trail? The murderer, he is clever. He strikes, knowing suspicion will fall upon another. Such is the mask. I shook my head. But surely, Poirot silenced me with a raised hand. Patience. The little grey cells, they demand order. First, the facts. Eleanor feared exposure. She meant to reveal a name. She was silenced before she could. And the footsteps, they are key. He rose, his silhouette sharp against the firelight. Tomorrow, Hastings, we test our suspects. Each shall be confronted with words from the diary. Subtly, carefully. One will betray himself. His eyes gleamed with quiet triumph. For the dead, they cannot speak aloud, but through ink, through memory, they whisper. And Hercule Poirot, he listens. The fire crackled, the rain drummed, and the crimson diary lay upon the table like a heart torn from its chest, beating still with secrets yet unspoken. And I knew, though I could scarcely say why, that before another dawn broke, Ashcombe Manor would no longer be shrouded only in grief, but in revelation. Chapter 6. Shadows of Suspicion. Part 1. The storm had not abated. If anything, it regarded him gravely. So, you admit the quarrels. I admit nothing criminal. Good God, man, if every husband were suspect for an argument with his wife, we should all swing. Poirot let the silence hang until the fire popped sharply in the grate. Then he bowed his head. Merci, monsieur. You have been honest enough. But as Sir Reginald left, his hand shook upon the door handle, and Hastings whispered, "He looked like a man cornered." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Or a man conscious of appearances. There is a difference, mon ami." Part 2. Clara Whitmore was next. She glided in with her usual feline grace, but there was a flicker of unease about her eyes. Poirot gestured toward the diary. "Permit me to read. Clara flatters, yet beneath her smiles lies hunger. I must dismiss her, but not yet. She watches me too closely. What do you make of that, mademoiselle?" Her composure faltered. She mistrusted me, but she was wrong. I served her faithfully." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "Faithfully. Yet she wrote these words not once, but thrice, each darker than the last. Why would she so persist if there were not cause?" Clara's lips trembled before she mastered herself. Because she feared shadows where there were none. She grew suspicious of everyone, her husband, her nephew, even the doctor. "Why not me?" Poirot inclined his head. "Yet shadows can be real, mademoiselle. Tell me, why did you not resign if she threatened dismissal?" "Because I had nowhere else to go," she said quickly. "I depended on her. Surely, you see, it would have been madness to harm the one person upon whom my livelihood rested." Poirot let the statement hang, then smiled softly. "Madness, yes. But jealousy, ambition, desperation, they are madness also." Her breath caught. Then, with sudden coldness, she rose. "I need not endure this insinuation. I shall not stay to be insulted." She swept from the room, and Hastings muttered, "She's hiding something, Poirot, I swear it." Poirot stroked his mustache. "Perhaps, but which is more dangerous, Hastings? The woman who hides something, or the one who hides nothing, because she—"
"You? What then?" Mortimer's face blanched, and for a moment he seemed on the verge of collapse. Then he mastered himself. "I am no murderer. I heal. I do not kill." Poirot dismissed him with a nod, but when he was gone, Hastings said, "He looks guilty as sin." Poirot shook his head. "He looks as one who has peered into the abyss and fears being pushed. That is not always the same as guilt." Anthony Gray was last. He lounged in insolence, hands shoved deep into his pockets. "So, Poirot, found anything juicy in Aunt Eleanor's scribbles?" Poirot's eyes glittered. "Indeed. Anthony begs again. He swears this time it is the last, but I am weary of his lies. To pay him is to feed the fire. He grows reckless. If I refuse, what then?" Anthony flushed. She misunderstood. I only needed a loan. Everyone has debts. She made a mountain of it." Poirot's voice was silken. "And if she refused?" His bravado crumbled. "Then it'd have been ruined. But I wouldn't, blast it, I wouldn't kill her. She was the only one who ever helped me." Poirot rose abruptly, his figure small but commanding. "Enough. You may all think yourselves clever, but Lady Eleanor's words, though imperfect, shine light into your souls. And soon, mes amis, the mask will slip from one of you." 4. That night, as wind shrieked round the manor, Poirot sat alone in the library, the crimson diary upon his knee. I drowsed in an armchair, lulled by the storm, when suddenly Poirot exclaimed softly, "Regardez, Hastings, a page is missing." I leapt up. "What?" He showed me. Between the penultimate entry and the final jagged line, a leaf had been torn cleanly out. "Someone," Poirot whispered, "removed a page. Perhaps it named the very person she feared. Without it, the diary condemns all, but proves none." At that instant there was a sound, a faint thud, as of
Glinting in the faint light. I watched him turn it over with almost reverent precision. "Observe, Hastings," he murmured. "Lady Eleanor's miniature remains, yet opposite, an absence. Someone has torn away the companion portrait. Why? Because it was dangerous. It revealed too much." "Who do you think it was of?" I asked. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "That, mon ami, is the question. Husband? Nephew? Lover? Whoever it was, Lady Eleanor kept him close to her heart. And someone feared that closeness enough to erase it." He rose, smoothing his waistcoat. "Come, today we consult our little company. The locket. It will speak if their faces do not." In the drawing-room the household assembled once more, restless as schoolchildren under scrutiny. Poirot placed the locket upon the table. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, "this was hidden in the cabinet. Its clasp is broken, its portrait missing. Which of you knows it?" A silence fell, thick as velvet. Then Sir Reginald cleared his throat. "It was Eleanor's. She wore it often in her youth, though I had not seen it lately." Clara leaned forward, eyes bright. "She kept it in her jewel box. I polished it once or twice. The portrait was of a child, I think. Perhaps—" She stopped abruptly, as though realizing she had said too much. Poirot pounced. "A child, you say? And what child was so dear to Lady Eleanor that she wore him upon her heart?" Clara's cheeks coloured. I cannot recall. Perhaps I was mistaken." But her evasion only deepened the mystery. Part 2. Poirot turned his gaze upon Dr. Mortimer. "And you, Monsieur le Docteur, you who saw her most closely, do you recall this locket?" Mortimer's face clouded. "Yes, she showed it to me once. It contained her own likeness and another. She said it was someone she trusted above all others." "Whom?" Poirot asked softly. The physician hesitated. She did not name him. She grew quiet, as though afraid she had revealed too much. Anthony Gray gave a short laugh. "Oh, come now. Everyone knows she doted on me. She probably kept my picture there. That's why one of you stole it. Because you—" Unease. Mortimer sank back, burying his face in his hands. Later, in Poirot's chamber, I found him deep in thought. The diary spread open once again. "This locket, Hastings, it is dynamite. If indeed Mortimer's likeness was there, then Lady Eleanor's secret was perilous indeed. A respectable doctor, a baronet's wife, a whisper of scandal, it is motive enough for silence." "But Beatrice might be lying," I objected. "Perhaps to save herself, or to shift blame." "Exactement," Poirot said. "The maid sees more than she admits. But whether she lies or speaks truth, both are revealing." He closed the diary, then reopened it at the jagged final entry. "And now, Hastings, consider this. The torn page. Where is it? Why tear one page and not the rest? The murderer is clumsy, but also cunning." At that moment, Poirot lifted the locket again, studying the empty oval where the miniature had once rested. He frowned, then fetched a small knife from his desk. Gently he prized apart the rim of the frame. Something thin and folded slipped out. "My friend," Poirot whispered, The missing diary page, hidden here, behind the portrait. My heart leapt. Poirot, what does it say? He smoothed the fragile scrap upon the desk. The ink was blurred but legible. I can bear it no longer. If I am betrayed tonight, let the truth be known. The one I trusted most has turned against me. He comes masked in devotion, but behind it lies ruin. His hand will end me. I felt a chill sweep over me. Good Lord, she named him, didn't she? Poirot shook his head. No, she gives no name, but she gives the essence. Betrayal by the one she trusted most. His eyes blazed with sudden fire. And who was that, Hastings? Who stood nearest her heart? The answer is here, but the little grey cells must arrange it. Poirot sat very still. The diary page before him, the locket with sharp features. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Lady Eleanor's locket has yielded its secret. It speaks of betrayal, of love twisted into peril. Now, let us see whose mask will crack first. And as the wind moaned faintly through the chimneys, I knew that the circle was tightening, and that the murderer of Lady Eleanor Ashcombe was nearer than ever to being revealed. Chapter 8. The Mask Slips, Part 1. The atmosphere in the great hall was brittle with tension. The storm had lifted, but the air hung heavy with the damp of retreating rain. Poirot had summoned the household again, this time with a curious, quiet authority. He moved not as a guest, but as a magistrate presiding over judgment. Upon the polished table lay the locket, gleaming faintly. Beside it, folded neatly, the recovered diary page. "My friends," Poirot began softly, "last night I made a discovery. A secret hidden in plain sight, concealed in the very jewel that Lady Eleanor treasured most. The locket contained not only a portrait, but also a page torn from her diary. The murderer believed it destroyed. The words fell like stones into still water. Sir Reginald's face reddened. Clara's lips tightened. Anthony clenched his fists. Mortimer's pallor deepened, and Beatrice shifted uneasily. Poirot's eyes glittered. Lady Eleanor wrote of betrayal, of one she trusted, who masked devotion with ruin. She left no name, yet her words are more dangerous than a signature, for each of you knows whether they fit you or not." He paused, letting silence gnaw at their nerves. Hastings and I exchanged a glance. Poirot was tightening the net. "Let us speak plainly," Poirot said at last. "Each of you will answer me one question. You will not know the questions in advance, nor may you prepare. It is in the unguarded moment, you see, that the truth leaps out." Part 2. He turned first to Sir Reginald. "Monsieur, where were you precisely when Lady Eleanor left the drawing-room at 10:15? Reginald drew himself up. "I was in the library." "Yourself by haste, mademoiselle." He turned next to Anthony. "You claimed Lady Eleanor's affection was for you. Did she ever promise you her fortune?" Anthony smirked. "Not in words, no, but she hinted. She said I was her favorite. Everyone knew it." "Yet the will names Clara," Poirot observed. "Were you disappointed?" Anthony's eyes narrowed. "Yes, but disappointment is not murder." Poirot leaned closer. "Perhaps, or perhaps it is when combined with debts, with desperation. Tell me, monsieur, how much do you owe?" Anthony flushed scarlet. That is none of your concern." but his trembling hands betrayed the truth. Finally, Poirot turned to Dr. Mortimer. "Monsieur, Beatrice swears the locket once held your portrait. What say you?" Mortimer's voice cracked. "She lies. Eleanor respected me, yes, but nothing improper passed between us." Poirot inclined his head. "Then why tremble so? Why fear the truth if your conscience is clean?" Mortimer buried his face in his hands once more. Part 3. The room was silent, save for the ticking of the great clock. Poirot let the tension coil like a drawn bowstring. Then he turned with sudden swiftness to Beatrice. "And you, mademoiselle, why reveal Mortimer's likeness now? Why not before?" Beatrice faltered. Because I was afraid. I thought it would bring scandal." "Scandal for whom?" Poirot pressed. "For Lady Eleanor. For the doctor. She cared for him, yes, perhaps more than for the others. I thought silence kinder." Poirot leaned forward. "Yet kindness, mademoiselle, is not your usual motive. You are practical, discreet, cautious. Why this sudden boldness?" Beatrice's lips trembled. "Because I could not bear to see the wrong man accused." "Ah," Poirot whispered. "So you protect one by accusing another. Interesting." The maid turned white. Poirot allowed a long silence, then gathered up the locket and the torn page. "Mes amis, you have heard yourselves. You have heard your contradictions, your evasions, your tempers. One among you wears a mask. That mask has begun to slip." He tapped the diary page. "Lady Eleanor wrote of betrayal."
Little than have him expose everything. Poirot's eyes glittered. He leaned close to me and whispered, "You hear, Hastings. The conspiracy begins to show itself." Within the room, chairs scraped, a drawer slammed, then silence. Poirot drew me away quietly. His face was alight with triumph. "Now, mon ami, the mask has slipped indeed." Two of them, Mortimer and Anthony, bound together in fear. But is it guilt they share, or only panic? That we shall soon discover. He folded his arms, smiling that peculiar, satisfied smile. "The murderer has betrayed himself tonight, Hastings, but he does not yet know how fully. Soon, very soon, the truth will be laid bare." And as we returned to Poirot's chamber, the shadows in the hall seemed to whisper with dread, for the game was nearly at its end. Chapter 9. The Web Tightens. Part 1. The next morning the house was restless. Servants whispered in corridors. The suspects prowled like caged beasts. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in every creak of the manor. Poirot, immaculate as ever, seemed oddly serene. He had arranged a series of private interviews in Lady Eleanor's study. One by one the household would face him, not before the group, but alone. "Observe, Hastings," he said as we waited for the first visitor. "A man may play to an audience, but alone he betrays himself. This day I shall weave my web." The door opened. Sir Reginald entered, blustering. "See here, Poirot, this is intolerable. We're treated like criminals in our own house." Poirot smiled gently. "Sit, monsieur. You are under no compulsion. But if you prefer that suspicion falls upon you unchallenged, by all means depart." Reginald flushed, sank into the chair. Poirot studied him with cat-like stillness. "You loved your wife, Sir Reginald?" "Of course I did," he snapped. "Yet you were ruined financially. Lady Eleanor's fortune propped up your estates. Had she altered her will, had she withdrawn support, you stood to lose everything, n'est-ce pas?" Reginald shifted uneasily. "She would never have abandoned me." Poirot's gaze held a child's face, when others insist it was a man's. "Why lie, Clara?" Her composure cracked. "Because I was afraid you'd think ill of her. Afraid you'd dig up some scandal with Dr. Mortimer. I wanted to protect her memory." Poirot tilted his head.
Protect her memory, or protect yourself, mademoiselle? Suppose she had meant to change her will again. Suppose you feared being cast aside. Clara's breath quickened. That's not true, she whispered. She promised me. She said she would always provide. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Always, mademoiselle? Even when she discovered your debts, your secret gambling visits in town? Clara's face drained of blood. How did you know? Poirot smiled faintly. The little grey cells, mademoiselle, they see much. When she fled, trembling, Poirot turned to me. Voilà, Hastings. She hides a weakness. Gambling, debts. It makes her vulnerable. But is she desperate enough for murder? That remains. Part 3. The next to enter was Anthony Gray, swaggering, defiant. Well, Poirot? Going to accuse me again? Poirot steepled his fingers. Tell me, monsieur, how much do you owe? Anthony laughed harshly. What business is that of yours? Poirot leaned in. Enough that your creditors pursue you across London. Enough that only a sudden inheritance could save you, no? Anthony's bravado faltered. She promised me, he muttered. Promised you? Lady Eleanor. And yet her will left you nothing. How does that feel, monsieur, to be deceived? Anthony's fists clenched. She was going to change it again. I know she was. Clara tricked her, poisoned her mind against me. Poirot raised a brow. Poison? A curious word, monsieur. You use it often. Why? Anthony froze, realizing his slip. I meant figuratively. Poirot smiled, cat-like. Ah, but sometimes the figurative reveals the literal, does it not? That will be all. Anthony stormed out, but the mask of arrogance had cracked. Then came Dr. Mortimer. He looked exhausted, eyes hollow, hands trembling. Doctor, Poirot said gently. You lied once, when you said you knew nothing of her quarrels. Later you admitted hearing much. Why conceal it? Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. Because I am afraid. Afraid of what will happen if the truth is told. Poirot leaned forward. Afraid of whom, mademoiselle? She hesitated, lips trembling. Of them all. They would see me ruined if I spoke too freely. Poirot regarded her a moment, then nodded. Très bien, you may go. When the door closed, he rose, eyes blazing with quiet triumph. Hastings, he whispered, the web tightens. Each has revealed their weakness. Reginald fears ruin. Clara hides debts. Anthony craves fortune. Mortimer hides intimacy. Beatrice conceals loyalty. And within these threads lies the truth. He lifted the diary page, placed it once more in the locket. Tonight, Hastings, we gather them all. I shall name the murderer before them. My pulse quickened. You mean you know at last? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Mais oui. The little gray cells are satisfied. The answer is here. He tapped his forehead. But they must hear it in my own time. Tonight, the mask will fall. And as dusk settled upon Ashcombe Manor, I felt the noose of truth tighten around one guilty neck. Chapter 10. The Final Revelation, Part 1. The great drawing room had been prepared at Poirot's request. Lamps glowed softly, the fire crackled low, and the storm-beaten windows reflected flickers of light like watchful eyes. The suspects were assembled, Sir Reginald stiff and defiant, Clara pale and trembling, Anthony restless, Mortimer hollow-eyed, and Beatrice withdrawn. Poirot entered last, immaculate as ever, carrying the golden locket in his hand. He bowed slightly. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice smooth. The hour has come. You have waited for truth. Now truth will speak. Lady Eleanor Ashcombe was murdered. Tonight, I shall name the hand that ended her life. A collective shudder ran through the room. Poirot placed the locket on the table. Within this trinket lay her confession, A torn page from her diary, hidden here by the murderer, who believed it destroyed. It told of betrayal by one man.
You are innocent. Beatrice's eyes shone with sudden tears. Poirot let the silence stretch, then said softly, "One remains." All eyes turned toward Dr. Mortimer. He flinched under the weight of their gaze. Poirot's voice was low, precise. "Doctor, you are Eleanor's confidant. She trusted you above all. She placed your likeness in her locket. And you betrayed that trust." Mortimer sprang up. "No! I cared for her. I never—" Poirot raised a hand. "Permit me. Lady Eleanor feared betrayal. She wrote, 'He comes masked in devotion, but behind it lies ruin.' That is you, Doctor. You masked devotion with counsel, but behind it you siphoned her fortune." A gasp rippled through the room. Mortimer froze. "Yes," Poirot continued calmly. "You managed her charitable trusts. You moved funds quietly into false accounts. Lady Eleanor discovered it. She confronted you. She threatened exposure. And so, you silenced her." Mortimer staggered, white as chalk. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The method? Simple. Her sleeping draught. You prepared it yourself. You added a slow, tasteless poison, one that mimicked a failing heart. To the world, she died of weakness. To you, it was salvation. Or so you thought." Reginald roared, "My God! Is this true?" Mortimer collapsed into his chair, trembling violently. Poirot pressed on mercilessly. "The torn diary page sealed your guilt. You tore it out but feared discovery. You hid it behind your portrait in the locket, thinking none would search there. When I found it, I saw the truth." Mortimer buried his face in his hands. I had no choice." Poirot's eyes glittered with cold fire. "Always there is choice, monsieur. Murder is the choice of cowardice." The room was silent but for Mortimer's ragged breathing. Anthony leapt to his feet. "It's not only him. He's right. I knew about the money. I overheard their argument. I thought I could use it, blackmail him perhaps. That's why we spoke last night." Poirot inclined his head. I overheard you, Monsieur Anthony. That is why I went." Then a puzzle had been solved.
The truth, mes amis, is always simple. Greed, betrayal, murder. It is the oldest tale in the world. Part 4. Poirot motioned for Hastings to summon the authorities. Then he addressed the room one last time. "You see, each of you bore suspicion. That was the murderer's hope. That guilt would scatter, that the innocent would contradict themselves. But guilt has one face, one weight, and tonight it could no longer be hidden." He tapped the locket. "Lady Eleanor, even in death, spoke. She placed her warning here, and it was enough." Mortimer was led away, broken, muttering prayers. Sir Reginald sank heavily into a chair, face lined with despair. Clara clung to the armrest, trembling. Anthony poured himself a glass of brandy with shaking hands. Beatrice stood apart, silent tears on her cheeks. Poirot adjusted his mustache with delicate precision. "The case is closed, Hastings. Justice will take its course." I stared at him in awe. "Once again, Poirot, you have seen where none else could." He smiled faintly. "Ah, mon ami, it was never the poison, nor the locket, nor even the diary page. It was psychology. The betrayer always reveals himself, if one listens closely enough." He rose, casting a final glance at the firelit room. "Lady Eleanor may rest now." Her voice was faint, but Poirot heard it. "Always, Hastings, one must listen. To the dead, as well as to the living. And with that, he turned toward the shadowed corridor, his silhouette sharp against the glow of the fire. Hercule Poirot, triumphant once more.